Hello everybody, it's Mr. Manzai here and welcome back to another video and Happy New Year to all of you. I felt the best way to start off 2019 would be with my Spider-Man PS4 review. So with all further ado, let's see what I got to say about the game and see how it's holding up since I started playing it.
Coming through. Hello, New York! Haha! New suit, same old me.
So, let's talk about the gameplay first. The gameplay for Spider-Man, I would say, is actually one of the shining parts of this game entirely. How smooth the combat is, the stealth, the web swinging, which I will get into individually. The combat in this game is very good and it is very on par with the Batman Arkham franchise. I understand that there is a lot of people who don't like the comparison, but honestly, I think there's nothing wrong with it being on par with the Batman Arkham franchise. I see it this way: if a game doesn't have some originality and it does take inspiration and influence from other games but can be done in a very good way or have its own distinct factor about it, then I don't have a problem with it whatsoever. With Spider-Man, I can definitely see the comparisons when it comes down to the Batman Arkham franchise, which I would say this game alone is on par with some of the Batman Arkham games, so that's not a bad thing at all. So in my opinion, I feel the gameplay is very solid and very smooth when it comes down to the animations. I think Insomniac did a very good job here. When it comes down to gameplay as well, you can also use your spider gadgets, which is something on par which you would see in the Batman Arkham franchise, and you can also use these and also sustain your momentum, which is one thing I feel this game does better than the Batman Arkham franchise. When it comes down to Spider-Man, you could use gadgets, takedowns, and also keep the speed of how fast you're fighting enemies without losing any sort of momentum or even getting hit entirely. And also the animations for all of this are very well done in my opinion. So shouts out to Insomniac Games, you did a very good job there. Now on to the web swinging. I'm going to be completely honest with you. Before I played the game and when I saw this game revealed, I thought the web swinging was going to be very quick time event based and very gimmicky, but fortunately it's nothing like that at all. It is your typical web swinging like you would see in every other Spider-Man game, but I think they've done a very good job with innovating it in my opinion. When it comes down to propelling over roofs or trying to sustain momentum while swinging, you can do all of that. So you can press R2 and L2 on certain surfaces and you could swing, jump towards a surface, and then you can launch off of that surface by pressing X, and you can keep your momentum and speed whilst you're going towards another obstacle or another roof by simply pressing the booster R2 and L2. In my opinion, I feel web swinging is the best thing about this game, honestly. Like, I absolutely love swinging. In fact, there was a trophy to actually use the fast time feature, which I know a lot of people don't actually like doing because it kind of sucks. Like, yeah, you get to see Spider-Man using a train, but that's not cool, bruv. I prefer to go out and start swinging like a badass as Spider-Man in my free time. So I feel when it comes down to traversing as well, I feel with a lot of games nowadays, traversing big open worlds does get very tedious, and it really does emphasize you to use the fast travel feature. But with Spider-Man, I didn't feel this at all. But when it comes down to Spider-Man, I preferred not to use the fast travel at all. And I think if you use the fast travel, you'd be missing out on quite a lot of the beauty of the game when it comes down to the graphics. And now let's talk about the graphics. Well, to be completely honest with you, the graphics are amazing. Like, well, what do I have to say about the graphics here? I haven't had any issues when it comes down to the graphics, so I feel the graphics are pretty solid. In fact, they are very beautiful, especially on my favourite suit, which I will get into later. The Mark 1 armor suit for Spider-Man, which is the black and silver. How the light reflects on the armor and you see bits of grit on his suit. I think it is very well done. Insomniac, you actually did very good justice to my favourite suit, which I'm going to get into now. So with Spider-Man, there are going to be plenty of suits where you can choose from and see if which one's your personal favourite. Mine is the Mark 1 armor, which I said. And also with certain suits you will come with suit powers. So for example, with the Spider-Man Infinity War outfit, it has a suit power which you can use the mechanical arms in combat. And this arm ability extends your melee reach, or you could use the Spider Spirit, which gives off a fiery essence when fighting enemies, which does a slight damage over time when enemies are in close proximity to you. Or you have the vintage Spider-Man suit, which I think is a bit pointless in my opinion, where his suit ability, basically you can insult your enemies when you're fighting them and it taunts them into charging at you. Honestly, I think that suit power is a bit pointless, but there are some suit powers which are relatively pointless, and there are some suit powers which are very good and outshine the majority. So for example, there is a suit which you can get after you complete the game, where Spider-Man is absolutely naked and has nothing but his mask and underpants on. That suit ability will come with a power where you can one-hit any enemy, besides bosses of course, but you also get one hit if an enemy hits you. So you get a very high risk, high reward, which I think is very good. And now on to the main attraction of why you guys are here to play Spider-Man. The story. In my opinion, I think the story for Spider-Man PS4 is by far one of the best ones we've had, and it's also a very good stepping stone when it comes down to making a franchise. I've noticed with a lot of Spider-Man games that a lot of them seem to be very bloated with villains and storylines. When it comes down to this one, it feels relatively on the short side, or not short I should say, more on the lines of a small portion of storylines, so, you know, saving the best for last. So obviously in this game we have the Sinister Six, and we have other villains that we come across throughout the campaign and the storylines, such as the side missions and side activities. I think they did a really good job when it comes down to the stories. And also I really liked how some of the villains have character development, which I think a lot of superhero movies don't seem to have nowadays. Well, not all of them. Some of them do actually have pretty good villains. But nowadays, it's normal to have a pretty one-dimensional villain when it comes down to the movie, because no one really cares. You just want to see them get their asses kicked. But with Spider-Man, I really noticed how a lot of the villains in this game have a lot of motivations into what they want to do and why they are bad in the way that they are. And it really humanizes the villains, and I really liked how humanizing villains can make a very good character, and it can even make you want to vouch for the villain despite how they are trying to portray themselves and what they are trying to do. But I do have my issues with the missions or with side activities. So we have the smaller side activities where they are very repetitive in my opinion, such as the crime activities or the lab activities, or even the snowball activities where you would basically go do a little side mission which doesn't do anything towards the plot. It's purely crime based, and there are a lot of them, and to be honest, after 100%ing the game, I did find those missions in particular very tedious to do, but it was worth it getting the platinum, which I managed to get in 3 days, which is my best record of all time. So when it comes down to the side activities, I think more could have been improved when it comes down to how repetitive they are. But, you know, it is what it is. A lot of Spider-Man games seem to have this issue as well. So hopefully in the next game, they can improve on the side activities and making them a bit more enjoyable. A bit more like the side storyline, instead of like the activities that we would have. Make them a bit more of substance is the word I'm trying to look for. But when it comes down to the main story, I have got to say this is probably one of the best stories that we've had for Spider-Man in years. I know we've had the Amazing Spider-Man games, which were trash, and we've had the other Spider-Man games which were very unique, such as like Web of Shadows or Shattered Dimensions, or even Spider-Man 2 or Ultimate Spider-Man. We've had a very mixed up and down when it comes down to the timeline, but I would definitely say the storyline for this is probably the most grounded, but is definitely one of the best. So for the Spider-Man story alone, I would highly recommend you guys pick it up. It is definitely worth playing, and especially right now I believe it's on sale. You guys should give it a try. Now, the first DLC of the game. Yes, I am reviewing the DLCs alongside with the base game, so you know if you should pick up the full thing or not. So, with the Heist DLC, this DLC is mainly about the relationship between Black Cat and Spider-Man and how they move as a dynamic duo, and this storyline, I ain't gonna lie, it's actually pretty dope. I really enjoyed it, but unfortunately it is very short and has a lot of artificial filler missions as well. When it comes down to the story alone, I really did enjoy it, but it really did feel like it's a stepping stone or it's sequel baiting, which I will get into the next DLC about, and it pretty much was for me. The story though really does show that Felicia Hardy, or the Black Cat, has had history when it comes down with Spider-Man, and they also develop the lore of Black Cat throughout this DLC as well, and you get to learn a little bit more about the brand of Black Cat, which I really did enjoy. Negatives though, unfortunately, despite how good this DLC is, I just found it very short, and I think a lot of people would also agree who played this DLC. This is probably the shortest DLC that we've got out of all three of them. I managed to complete this in just under an hour, and for what it's worth, no, it's not really all that good as a like singular package, because one, the suits ain't all that good, two, the campaign is really short, and three, a lot of the side missions are your typical crime fighting missions and collecting collectibles and such. So for this one, I would say this is the weakest, but it also does add a little bit of spice to Spider-Man's character and also with Black Cat. So as of right now, if you're going to get this, get it with the season pass. Turf Wars. You know what, bloods? I'm going to be honest. Before this DLC came out, I wasn't really all of that into what I was seeing, like Hammerhead, until I saw my suit, bruv. When I saw my suit, I was like, no, I've got to play this. No, I don't care if it's shit or not. I want that suit. So if you guys know, Mark 1 Armor Spider-Man suit is my suit. That's my favorite Spider-Man suit of all time. And then I see it shining like it's nothing in Turf Wars. And I'm like, but you know what, bro? You know, it's the Black Friday deal. Let me go put some money down and see what I want. So I end up picking up the thing, and guess what, fam? This turns out to be the best DLC in my honest opinion when it comes down to the Spider-Man DLCs. With this Spider-Man DLC, guys, from what I can gather when it came down to this one, is one, we've got a bit more longevity, two, they kind of improved on the mission spread out for the activities, and three, the story alone goes in such a good way. Like, let me break this down. First, the tone of this story, much more darker, and the first intro, or in fact the introduction to the villain of this DLC, which is Hammerhead, which I will also get into, was so well done. In fact, they made Hammerhead somebody who a lot of people didn't take seriously. If you guys watched the 90s cartoon of Spider-Man with that really awesome like intro, you know Wagwan, and with like Madam Web and all of that, with that cartoon, Hammerhead was just a generic villain that no one took seriously. Like Big Man saying, we're out here fighting the Sinister Six, Mr. Negative, Electro, Rhino. Yeah, and you compare all of these guys to Hammerhead, a lot of people would instantly think, what does this guy have to do with anything? Like, what is so scary about this guy, bruv? I can gladly say, within the first 2 minutes of this guy being on screen, or even less than that, my man's taking up all the limelight. Like, nobody in the room with this guy is outshining him, and he knows it. This guy is scary. The voice actor, I don't know who the voice actor is, but he did a very good job. And then they also made him a pretty big presence throughout the DLC, even when he's not on screen. I feel Insomniac did a really good job when it came down to mastering a villain. Not even that this guy is relatable, because he's not. He's more on the lines of scary, intimidating, like a horror movie serial killer. That's what you get from Hammerhead, and I think they did a wicked job with his character. And now let's get on to the side activities, which I also mentioned. The side activities in this DLC are also slightly less repetitive than the heist, but I feel with this one we have layers and the same typical crime activities and a bit of snowball, but I feel with this one it's a bit more spread out when it comes down to the side activities. And knowing how layers are, they are my personal favourite side activities in the game. I really did enjoy how they used the those missions as well to incorporate them into the DLC. Plus you got the really awesome suits to collect. I also just enjoyed it in general. I don't really see what the issue is with this, but I could say that this is on the shorter side as well. But you do get a bit of bang for your buck when it came down to this DLC. So if anything, guys, if you guys want to try out one of the best DLCs or the best DLC, Turf Wars is definitely your one. And let's see what we have to say about the final DLC, Silver Lining. Big man thing here. What the fuck was I seeing at the ending of Silver Lining, bruv? Like, I know, be different, you know, I get you, but there is a level of where you're going batshit crazy with it, and to one point where it's like, this ain't even realistic to this universe's standards, bruv. And this is Spider-Man we're talking about. This is my guy getting bitten by a radioactive spider. Radioactive. Divides the molecules in people's bodies, fam. My man's still walking. That's realistic enough for me to take relatively seriously. But when you got my guy like Hammerhead in his situation, you lost me, bruv. You lost me. So besides all of that though, let's talk about the full thing here. So when it comes down to the DLC of Silver Lining, this one is more primarily about Silver Sable and her forces and her lore and her backstory as well, plus a bit of Hammerhead and a bit of Spider-Man. But this is purely based on Silver Sable as a character. With this one though, I really did notice that her tone had changed from the base game, because I kind of felt she got a story arc in the base game and it kind of had a resolution, you know, or a conclusion to it. And then this DLC kind of went against that conclusion, and then she kind of went back to the way she was before her story arc in the base game. So I think that's a bit of an issue there. But overall, I would say it was a good DLC. But there are just some things that are just insane, bruv. So, you know what? I'm going to mention it, fam. So, skip 10 seconds from now. In 3, 2, 1. Skip to 10 seconds. That head transplant from Hammerhead onto that robot is fucking ridiculous, bruv. I don't know whose idea was it to do that. But, big man thing. That ain't flying with me, bruv. That's ridiculous. Okay, I'm pretty sure you've come back now. But, yeah, bruv. Like, in my honest opinion, though, I think this one was the most cinematic, or, like, the most action-packed out of all of them. Like, you're out here swinging on Silver Sable's jet, you know, shooting little drones with your web shooters while you're on the jet. It's like, it's very Call of Duty action, you know, which I like. You know, I like the whole action-based thing in New York. I think it was pretty cool. They went a new direction with it. Like, the dark themes, though, weren't as prominent as they were in this DLC, in Turf Wars. But they did touch upon them lightly, just slightly. Like, there is a torture scene in that, but it's lightly referenced. So, I do want to say, when it came down to Silver Lining, this is probably the second best out of it. One, because it's creative, despite some of my issues with the creativity behind certain shit. The suits, they were alright. Like, the suits, like, none of them are, like, suits that I would fuck with, personally. Like, the Aaron suit, yeah, I haven't unlocked into the Spider-Verse suit, but I've got to, though. And the Cyborg suit, that's for, like, the people who like weird shit about Spider-Man, you know? So, honestly, I think they were alright. They weren't the best. But the DLC was good, and we had some pretty good side missions. That's also a good factor. When it comes down to the side missions or the side activities, this one definitely takes the cake and is by far the best one. Insomniac definitely did listen to the feedback that they got with the side activities, and I'm really happy to see what they can do next when it comes down to the franchise for Spider-Man PS4. Now, on to my final verdict. When it comes down to Spider-Man PS4, I would highly recommend it to everyone who knows of Spider-Man, even if you haven't played any of the prior games to this one. I would still recommend it nonetheless. My personal view on this, I have to give this game a 9 out of 10. The reason it's actually pretty close to being a 10 out of 10 is because of them damn repetitive side missions. If the activities weren't so repetitive, then perhaps this game could have got a 10, including with the DLCs. But as of right now, I would definitely say it's a solid 9 out of 10. It's definitely worth the purchase. I think it's on January sale right now, so if you guys have that where you're at on PSN, now is the best time for you to give it a pickup and see Wagwan. So, you know, I would definitely say pick this one up. And also, if you guys want to make a donation, make sure you do so. Then my PayPal link will be in the description box below. Man needs to get a new Blue Yeti mic because my one's currently fucked right now. So if you want to be some support, make sure you drop that support in the donation tab. And also, if you drop a donation and state your name, I will also do a review for you if you do a viewer request as well. So yeah, supporting me, you get to choose what game I review. But at the moment though, bruv, it's got to be PlayStation 4 only, because at the moment I ain't got no other console besides that and my PlayStation 3, and I ain't got no capture card either. So keep in mind, it has to be on a PlayStation 4. So if you want to make a donation, that's the best way for you to make a viewer request, innit? So until then, guys, I will see you in the next review or video. I don't know when the next video is going to happen, because I'm trying to bring quality than quantity. So yeah, bruv, I'll catch you later. Take it easy.
Heavy.